So I'm Nuri Patel. I'm the National Director of fit20 in the UK. It's a fantastic way to train when we're allowed to, but for the time being, we're obviously online for this special session. And all the franchise owners and personal trainers are absolutely committed to help people to live a fitter, healthier and stronger lifestyle. And when we went into lockdown, we unanimously agreed that what we wanted to do was provide some complimentary sessions to help everyone, regardless of whether you're involved with fit20 as a member or somebody who's helping our members or not, just in the community, with these 4 headline sessions that we've got. And I'm really delighted to introduce our first speaker, Sam, who's actually coming back. He was so popular and well received last time round that we absolutely put him to the front of the queue. So without any further ado, let's hand over to Sam. You can give him a virtual round of applause or a wave to make him feel welcome. And the floor is yours, Sam. Great to have you here. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Niri. I appreciate your kind words, mate. So I'll just share my screen and then we can jump straight in. So this is me, Sam Wilkinson. I've been around in the health and fitness industry for around 5 years. And as Niri says, I had the pleasure of doing a similar kind of webinar earlier on this year. And my approach around nutrition is based around making things simple. And so I'm going to kind of stick to that vein today, rather than giving massive lists of things to buy, things to eat, things not to eat. I'm going to kind of talk about some principles and maybe some steps that are going to hopefully help rescue our lockdown a little bit. So this is basically my lockdown survival guide. So step 1 is accepting that it isn't going to be perfect. You know, the best way to get someone to stop doing something is to make them feel rubbish and feel like they're failing at it. Realistically, nobody quits a diet when they're succeeding and sticking to it. I would say that nobody jumps on the scales having lost a load of weight and they feel like they're really succeeding and they're doing really well, and at that point they decide to stop. Generally speaking, we stop doing things, particularly positive things, when we feel like we're failing and when we feel like we're not achieving or struggling to stick to it. So in an ideal world, we're going to set ourselves up for a success, and straight off the bat we're going to say that things are not going to be perfect. There's times when we're potentially going to make decisions that maybe aren't necessarily ideal, and that's okay. And what we're kind of looking at doing is accepting that and moving forward. Step 1, remember you are not a robot. Realistically, hopefully if you're on this call or watching this video, you know, you're a human being, and humans have got emotions, they've got thoughts, they've got feelings, they've got needs and their wants. Like, we are quite complex creatures realistically. And you know, a traditional diet, it doesn't accommodate that. It doesn't accommodate the fact that these will fluctuate. You know, you are going to have good days, you are going to have bad days. You are going to have days where you are more and less stressed, and that's naturally going to dictate the choices and the headspace that we have to make positive choices around food. You know, when we look at the world around us, you know, there's plenty of people who get paid to either look or perform at their best. I mean, and here's some examples. We've got bodybuilders, professional athletes, actors and actresses, and cover models. And what have they all got in common? Well, number 1 is they all, you know, part of their vocation is looking and performing at their best. The other one is that they all have some kind of off season. Like, even these people are not on it 24/7, 365. You know, even they have time where they have a bit of time away from it. Like, they are not perfect. Meanwhile, you know, us normal people, you know, mums, dads, wives, husbands, you know, we're looking after relatives, we're working, you know, we kind of ask ourselves, or can ask ourselves, to stick rigidly to a diet which bans all of our favorite foods. You know, and on top of that, it is lockdown. On top of that, we are homeschooling. Like, we are juggling a lot of balls. So again, step 1, accept that it's not going to be perfect. And a little caveat to that is that it doesn't mean it's a free for all. It doesn't mean it's not going to be perfect, so why bother? As always, we're focusing on just making little improvements rather than focusing on perfecting things and looking at areas where we can improve. Remember, we are not a robot. So step 2 is we're looking at focusing on adding things in rather than taking things out. You know, if we can increase, I call these the big 4 with a lot of my clients. if you increase the amount of protein you're eating, we're aiming for a portion at every meal. If you look at increasing the amount of veggies you're eating, again, just eat more, generally speaking, is the rule. Water, most of us are dehydrated, so you're aiming for around 2 to 3 litres, but again, just more is generally ideal. Then you're looking at hitting a bit more sleep. If you focus on increasing these things, then naturally the other things are going to drop off. Often we can get confused with banning carbs and stuff like that. But it's one of my kind of, the dark secrets or the dark arts of nutrition coaching is if you nail these 4 things, everything else is going to take care of itself. For example, if you focus on eating enough protein, in theory, that means that, you're not going to be hungry. That's going to keep you full. So you're going to be less inclined to go and snack. Another part of that is eating meals. It's hard to get enough protein and enough veggies if we're just doing laps of the fridge. One of the biggest dangers of lockdown is our proximity to the fridge and our cupboards. This kind of leads to first thing in the morning, we just wander our way over to his desk, sit down without having a breakfast. And then we end up kind of doing this kind of grazing with laps of the fridge, bruised between our Zooms, where we're never really quite hungry. We're never really quite full. We're just in this kind of constant little general grazing. And again, that then leads to us overeating, and it tends to us eating the sweeter stuff and the things that we tend to be trying to avoid. Next step is create an environment that supports what you want. And I would say of all of them, this is probably the most important. You can't add in what you haven't got. So if I'm referring back to that previous slide, if you haven't got the stuff in, if you haven't got veggies in, if you haven't got fruit in, if you haven't got a water bottle by your desk, you're going to find it really difficult to add that stuff in. A big part of this is making food choices ahead of time. So Sarah, I think it was, who's currently shopping, I sincerely hope you have a list of things that you're looking to buy and, things that you're wanting to add in. Because the things that we care about, we plan and we prioritize. As blokes, like I know I never miss an England rugby game because I plan for it and I prioritize it. I check the time it's on and I protect that time. In terms of a food sense, this can take a couple of different guises, but the most successful clients I work with, they do some form of planning around their meals. So that can be that they might write out a weekly menu with a shopping list and they actually have their teas planned out. Or if they've, got a bit more experience of it, they buy ingredients for the healthy meals that they know they like and they know they can eat. But ultimately, there is some kind of forward thinking around food. And one of the most important parts of that is that you make less food decisions on the go. At the end of the day, when you're tired, you've had a stressful day, the kids have been nightmares and, you've had problems with Zoom, you are much less likely to decide it's going to feel like less of a good idea to go and start chopping veggies and preparing a meal when there's the drawer of a Just Eat or an app or something nice and easy. So if you've made that decision ahead of time, like last night, I knew I had my little boy, I knew I was having lasagna for tea. I decided that on Sunday. We thought about food once and then we just followed the plan. Ultimately that kind of leads to us, you're relying on willpower a hell of a lot less. They've done quite a few studies and it's a bit of a mythical substance of what actually is willpower. It's this strange thing that seems to have deserted us in lockdown. And they've kind of put it down to these 3 kind of, things, if you want to say that. It's a combination of our habits. So for me personally, getting chocolate at a petrol station doesn't drain my willpower because it's just not something I do. It's not a habit that I'm in. Whereas for somebody who might be in the habit, it would take, a portion of their willpower or their energy, as it's called here, to try and resist that temptation. And a big part of it is also just your environment, that's what we're kind of focusing on. But it's a combination of those 3 things of which we can influence. So when we're on the topic of our environment, some of you may have heard of the marshmallow test, which it was done in 1970 at Stanford University. And basically what they were looking at doing was they were testing kids' willpower or their ability to delay gratification. They stuck a marshmallow in front of them and told them, if you wait 15 minutes, you can have another one. And it's quite a jolly test. It was quite funny. But the most successful ones, they covered their eyes, they rested their head in their hands, they sang to themselves, some of them actually fell asleep to try and kind of delay it or ignore it. But ultimately what they all did, the most successful children, they diverted their attention elsewhere and they kept that marshmallow out of sight, out of mind. go on YouTube if you've got a spare 5 minutes. It's quite a funny video, but some of the kids there smelling the marshmallow, and the ones who really focused on it, you know, they were the ones that tended to crumble faster. So we're kind of on that topic of out of sight, out of mind. Naturally, you know, our mind turns to sweet treats. It turns to the sweet cupboards. It turns to the kind of the biscuits and all that kind of thing. John Berardi, fantastic man. His like first law is, if food is in your possession or in your residence, you will eventually eat it. There will come a time, there will come a day where you've been stressed enough, you've run out of willpower, where you're going to end up diving in that cookie jar, especially at times like this in lockdown. So the idea is, what we're looking to do is replace these foods with better and healthier choices. Because again, as I said in my last webinar, you're more likely to eat fruit or snack on fruit if your fruit bowl is full of your favorite kinds of fruit than if it's full of kind of moldy oranges and brown bananas or whatever. You're less likely to eat it. And again, so on that vein, what we're looking to do is do something today your future self will thank you for. It's one of my favorite quotes. And in this context, it really kind of like, it really is quite relevant, because like, think of your most stressful day. It might be that first day of homeschooling. It might be that first day of lockdown, and kind of put yourself in that situation. And we're trying to think of how you would make your life easier in that situation. You know, I think it's quite amazing. Like, we back ourselves all the time and we kind of think, I'll just rely on willpower. I'll just rely on willpower. But at the end of the day, you want it to make your life easier. And again, make those choices ahead of time, because you're more likely to follow through. So step 4, and again, you know, this is probably one of the things which, like, well, the only thing which I would do if I'm looking to make changes in my food is I would simply write down what it is that I'm eating, because this allows you to get clear on what is actually happening. We're really good at kind of saying, oh, I'm eating enough, I'm drinking enough, whatever it is. But often when you actually have the data in front of you, you'll realize there are opportunities for you to improve. The other side of it is it also allows you to kind of have that increased awareness where, you know, if I eat something, I'll have to write it down. And that's one of the most like frequently, like, well, one of the things that clients frequently say to me is that when they do a food diary, it starts that conversation in their head. It brings that awareness to the forefront where, you know, if you go back to the petrol station analogy, you know, Barry might think, well, I do fancy chocolate bar, but if I have one, I've got to write it down. And so in terms of recording your eating, you've got a couple of options. You can use, you know, a food diary, which just simply write it down on notes or on some paper. You can use like a photo journal, or you can use something like MyFitnessPal if you really want to. But the idea of this is the consistency is a lot more important than the details. So do something which you can do consistently. I've had times when I've got kind of an incomplete food diary where one day is color coded, it's, you know, it's glorious, it looks beautiful. The next day is empty, and it's the days that are empty that tend to be the ones which are where the opportunities lie. So record what you're eating. Step number 4. The final point I would say is being mindful of your activity levels, or possibly your lack of them. Like, this is where a lot of conversations have gone, like with clients, and it's remembering that ultimately, you know, it's a source of enjoyment. You know, it's something where we bond with relatives people live with, but food is ultimately fuel. And the less we move, the less we need. You know, like even little things like, you know, when my clients were saying walking to the office, his desk is about 4 steps from the kettle, whereas at work, it was a good couple of minute walks to the canteen. And having those kind of things in your mind and being aware of them, again, is really vital in terms of surviving lockdown. Again, the little things that you can use to kind of track these is just the basic activity trackers that are on your phone or on your Apple Watch, whatever it is, using the step counters and using an exercise log. And again, with these things, like, we're not looking at I burned 79 calories yesterday or whatever it is. It's just being aware of your activity levels and then trying to increase them and trying to move them forwards. It doesn't necessarily have to be accurate. Again, you're just looking for improvement. And so that's that for today. So thank you. I look forward to any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Sam. I've taken tons of notes here. And as always, delivered in a way that it's simple and easy to follow. rather than making it complicated rocket science. So simple, actionable steps. So let's open it up. Who got something useful for that? Steph, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to ask Sam, and Sam knows me. I am a chocoholic.
Yeah.
And I will always choose chocolate over some fruit. So what advice would you give to somebody like me who does eat too much chocolate?
Well, I would say you have a few options. So one of the ones which, and it was a client that came up with this actually. So what he did was, when it came to like evening, nighttime snacking, rather than taking a bar or whatever it is, he'd take a little bowl of whatever treat it was. In his case, it was chocolate. But he'd kind of, in that chocolate, maybe, you know, pop some strawberries, pop some grapes, pop some bits of fruit or whatever. And then, you know, the idea is that then gradually you can kind of because having a bit of chocolate's not going to kill you. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can transition to having maybe a little bit more fruit, a little bit less chocolate. But the beauty of that is it's already kind of portioned out. If you portion it out and then take it with you, you've got a finite amount of chocolate and say, that's it for the evening. Rather than, one of the issues is over consuming, and you tend to go back and, do you know what I mean, get more and more. So I'd say that would be advice step number one.
Yeah. And if you go back and keep going back, don't get it in the first place, maybe?
Buy stuff like Freddos because they come in really little teeny tiny bars.
Fair enough. Okay. So just try a little bit of fruit in amongst them, is what you're saying.
I would say, yeah. And like I say, just pre-portioning it. Tell John to hide it if you need to.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great question, Steph. I think it's not just you that will benefit from that response from Sam. So awesome. Duncan, you had your hand up for a question or a comment as well.
You said, what do you take away from it? I loved your phrase, do something today your future self will thank you for. I think that's brilliant. I actually wrote that down. I've highlighted it as well. That's a fantastic one. And Steph, with what you were saying before about the chocolate, something that I found worked, as Sam was saying, is I haven't put it with other things like fruit because I don't know, it's just not for me to do that. I like chocolate as well, I have to say. But I'll take a whole big bar of chocolate and polish it off in one session very, very easily. But I found the thing to do, as Sam was alluding to there, is just one, hide it away. So it's not the thing I see. I see the fruit or whatever else, but I put the chocolate at the back of the cupboard in a container that I have to make an effort to go and get.
Padlock it, job lot, yeah.
You've got it. And then when I take bits through to the lounge, I just take, you know, a few strips or whatever. And I don't mind. If I feel I want to go back for more, I'll go back for more. But inevitably what happens, I'm sat down watching Netflix or whatever it is, and I think I can't bother to get up now.
Yeah.
And that stops me doing any more.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, understand.
Awesome. Great. Who else has got a question? Just wave at me if you turn your camera on, because I won't see you waving otherwise.
I'll ask a question. So one of the things I know that you were saying about making sure that you eat breakfast. I'm definitely a one for just grabbing a black coffee and just kind of sitting down at my desk. Is there, like, have you got any good little ideas for breakfast that are kind of quick and nice and healthy to start off the day?
So I would answer that question by basically saying that it doesn't, if you don't eat breakfast, awesome, that's fine. It might not fit in with your day. It's the grazing that is the problem.
Okay.
So what I find with a lot of, like, some folks just simply don't eat breakfast. They don't eat till lunchtime. Awesome, that's fine. That's what, like, you know, it's intermittent fasting. It's fashionable to call that. And you intermittently fast. That's really good. But the issue is when somebody who would normally eat breakfast, because they're at home, they've got up a bit later, they've not made time for it, so they kind of just, you know, zombie their way to the desk with a coffee, but then are grazed throughout the morning. That's where the issue kind of arises. So yeah, so I would say that if you don't fall in that camp, then just simply don't have breakfast. Just break your fast whenever is convenient, whenever fits in with your day.
That's fine. Great, thank you. I'll keep on with my black coffee then.
Thank you, Lucy. Natalie, have you got a question there? You're waving. Yep, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in the car. It's a busy day today. I'm all over. Sorry. That was brilliant, Sam. Thank you. I'm really bad for not having breaks at work, and I don't eat. And then I realised at 7 o'clock at night that I've not eaten anything, and then I end up eating everything, and I'll have a meal and then I'll end up eating as well because I've not eaten all day, and it's really bad. But I'm not very good at stopping to do that. So, and I do have alarms on my phone, but I also snooze them and then they go and I forget. So I don't know if you've got any advice.
My advice would be listen to the alarms on your phone. Realistically, another one. So, like one of the tactics which I use with some of my clients who they find that they can't eat for kind of long periods and they end up eating when they're starving, is really try and focus on eating slowly, because they reckon that it takes about like 20 minutes for your body to kind of actually realize that you're anywhere near full. And like if you've actually ever timed a meal, 20 minutes is absolutely ages. So you can wolf down a boatload of food in quite a short space of time, and then that's where the problem's going to arise. Whereas if you kind of really consciously say, I'm starving, my tendency will be to overeat because I'm starving, I'm going to kind of slow down and kind of really try to take your time and just try and drag it out. You'll find that you will, you'll give your body a chance to tell you that you are getting full, that you are kind of, you'll allow those fullness cues to kick in. I mean, that is, other than listening to your alarms.
Yeah, it's the late eating, I think, and sometimes I won't even be hungry when I do eat late. I feel like I'm constantly putting my body in starvation mode, so then I'm putting on weight instead of losing it. So I think I need to stop eating at 7, but make sure I eat before then, don't I, really?
Yeah, so that's it. So potentially it's trying to, like rather than overface yourself with trying to get yourself to eat a whole meal, again, like we're looking at kind of progress over perfection, like take something like, I don't know, a banana that's right easy to eat, and just start with something really simple and small and then work from there. I mean, if you're in the habit of not eating all day, eating a full lunch is probably quite daunting. So just mini steps and then kind of take it from there.
Okay, I will do. Thank you.
Awesome, great question and another great response. And I think that thing of slowing down is something that a lot of people that we meet through Fit20 and in our daily lives can benefit from, because if you're not paying attention to what you're eating, you're just shoveling it in, you don't realize as well. And it's only when you're physically feeling the stomach seams bursting that you think, well, maybe I've had a bit too much. But if you actually eat more mindfully and you chew your food more, then it has all sorts of benefits. And we could do a whole talk on just being more present and eating slowly, couldn't we, Sam, on that alone? So yeah, great answer and great question again. I'm sure there's lots of people who benefit from that as well. Lisa's just put in the chat that she discovered a lovely dessert. Thank you for sharing this. Poached, helps if you can say it, poached sliced apples for 5 minutes in a little water, sprinkle cinnamon on, and serve with natural yogurt in place of cream. And that saved Lisa from the chocolate. And I think if you try that, it'll probably save a lot of you from the chocolate, because cinnamon is really good at leveling out insulin spikes, which is what causes you to crave more sugar, add more fat, and all those things. So cinnamon's a natural good thing to have to stop you craving stuff. That was the technical response there. So thanks for sharing that. And you could also do that with poached pears, because the type of sugar that's in pears is much more insulin friendly. So you won't get as much of a sugar spike if you're sensitive, because some people are really sensitive to the sugar in fruit. Would that be right, Sam?
Absolutely, 100%.
Awesome. Yeah. So try poached pears as well. And those of you that are vegan, obviously vegan alternatives to the yogurt. So yeah, super. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa. Great one. Got me thinking about dessert already. It's insight and it's in mind now. So who else we've got time for one more question before we move to wrap it up?
I think Chris Smith-Dunn has got a question.
Chris, yeah, please go ahead, Chris.
So you mentioned protein and veg and increasing them. You didn't mention where carbs fit in this.
So reasons for that, I would say, is number one, carbs tend to be a food source which is very easy to overeat. If you think of the Western diet, we're having cereal or toast for breakfast, we're having sarnies, crisps and chocolate for lunch. Like a lot of our meals naturally tend to be quite carb heavy. And obviously there's nothing wrong with the carbohydrate, but its primary role is to be a fuel. What people tend to eat less of or be eating, not deficient, but not quite eating enough of is the protein and it is the veggies. So I tend to, with clients, if you focus on, you know, like filling your plate with protein, filling your plate with veggies, and then the carbs go on or whatever, like it'll kind of almost help reset that balance. Like one of the examples I use is with a Sunday dinner. What a lot of us tend to do is we cram us plates with everything and then try and squeeze a little bit of veggies on where we can. And so you kind of, if you base your meals around, get your protein on, get your veggies on, then the rest of it on, it kind of automatically brings it into being a better balance, if that makes sense.
Okay. So it's not about getting rid of them. It's just changing the balance of what you eat.
Yeah.
If you could just join me in giving a virtual round of applause to Sam for adding value and giving up his time to share with us. Thank you, Sam. Awesome. Really appreciate it. And all the franchise owners and personal trainers at fit20 for sharing the information with all of you. The session is being recorded, so if someone couldn't make it, they can watch it on catch up. But most of all, to each of you for giving up a little bit of your time and investing in yourself to be here today, because without you, we wouldn't have a webinar. So give yourselves a pat on the back for being here. And remember, it's not about just the information you get, it's being able to do something with it. Just take one or two little bits that really made sense to you or struck a chord with you or spoke to you, and you know, just make little changes, because those little changes do actually improve over time. So thank you, everyone, and great to have you. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong, and we'll see you all next Friday, if not before.